Assalamu alaikum, this is Dr. Mona Ladrisi, author of the Muslim Narcissist book and empowerment coach for Muslims. So I've not been able to post a podcast in the last couple of weeks because I was travelling and I came down with quite a bad cough virus. It's one of those lingering ones that don't go away easily. So I thought it could be beneficial to just drop a post on YouTube last night and let people know that I'll be back once inshallah I recover from my cough. And alhamdulillah, I got some beautiful dua, in the comments. So may Allah give you shifa and give you a speedy recovery from this cough. And lo and behold, I woke up this morning with no cough. So I know how much people want this podcast to be dropped about the parenting. So I thought I'd get it done as soon as possible for you and spend Saturday recording it. So alhamdulillah for good people in this world, alhamdulillah for people's dua, alhamdulillah for shifa that ultimately comes from the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So today's podcast is going to be about how to raise empathic children. So whether your children have narcissistic traits that you want to nip in the bud, or you want to learn how to nurture their empathic side so that they can grow up to be empathic adults, this podcast is for you. It's for empathic parents who really care about how they raise their children. And even if you are married to a narcissist or you're co-parenting with a narcissist, this podcast will really help you to give your children a fair chance of being raised as empaths. Okay, so whenever you have them, whether that be daily or whether on the weekends or every other weekend, you will have an opportunity as an empathic parent to give your children what they need. There are many empathic parents out there who feel really guilty for not being able to raise their children in a healthy way because they married a narcissistic person. And this narcissistic person makes it really difficult to instill empathic values in children because the children are copying the behavior of the narcissistic parent. Or, they're feeling guilty because the child is torn between two homes and they're feeling the child is being more affected and influenced by the narcissistic parent. So I get loads of clients coming to me who have this parental guilt for not being able to raise their children in an empathic home from the beginning. And I always say to them, look, this is the situation at hand. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala willed for this to happen. You're in this situation by qadr Allah. We have to accept the divine decree. What we can do, what's in our hands that we can work on, is you being able to instill empathic traits in your children so that they don't miss out. You don't want your children missing out because you're too busy beating yourself up and blaming yourself for the situation your children are now in. Okay, we've got to be productive with these things and we have to take charge of the things that are in our control to do. So inshallah, I will give you loads of tips today that will help you to do that, and that will inshallah eliminate the guilt that you feel and stop blaming yourself for the situation that you find yourself in, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala willed for those children to come. Okay, you had children with a narcissist. Okay, it happened. There's nothing we can do about that now. We have to work with what we've got. And just because they have a narcissistic parent does not mean that they're going to be narcissistic as well. You can 100% raise empathic children while they have a narcissistic mother or father. And I say this confidently because I've seen it happen many times. And ultimately, if you give children what they want and what they need and what they crave in order for them to grow up in a healthy way, then you're going to win them over, right? You're going to win them over. And in the worst case scenario, let's say you give children the best upbringing, but they end up being narcissistic. That's qadr Allah. On the Day of Judgment, you will be rewarded for all the efforts you made to raise your children in the best way you could for them to be healthy and empathic Muslim believers. Okay, that's the ultimate goal for Muslim parents. Because so many people raise their children to be good Muslims but not good believers. The two are different. Muslims and believers are different. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala separates them in the Quran. Not everyone who is Muslim is a believer. As you already know from all the podcasts I have released already, not everyone is a believer. So the ultimate goal is to raise your children as Muslim believers. People who worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and also believe in the unseen. They believe in the Day of Judgment. They believe in the hereafter. When you believe in these things, you will act in accordance to those beliefs, right? You know a Day of Judgment's coming. You're going to be careful in regards to how you treat people. You don't oppress people. You don't abuse people and so on. So you can pray tahajjud, you can fast Ramadan, you can do all of those things. But if you don't have belief in Iman, then you're going to be abusive, tyrannical, and you're going to treat people terribly. And this goes against the teachings of Islam. So our beliefs, right, what makes us believers is actually attached to our morality and our character. And what makes us Muslim is attached to the rituals. So the fasting, the praying, the tahajjud, all of those things, the charity, they are linked to worship rituals, the Muslim identity. But the believer's identity is attached to their character. So you could be a full hijabi, praying and all of that, fundraising, you're involved in teaching Quran. But if your character is bad, if your heart is dark, then you're not considered to be a believer. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in Surah Al-Furqan, Ayah 43, أَرَأَيْتَ مَنِ اتَّخَذَ إِلَهَهُ هَوَاهُ أَفَأَنْتَ تَكُونُ عَلَيْهِ وَكِيلًا. Allah says to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and I've mentioned this verse before in previous podcasts, have you seen, O Prophet, the one who has taken their own desires as their God? Will you then be a helper over them? So Allah's telling the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there's no help in these people. If people are worshipping their ego, their desires, their low level of nafs, their qareen, you have to leave them to it. These are not people who are considered to be believers. They have now entered the realm of kufr. Okay, so they might look Muslim, but they don't act as Muslim because they worship their ego, they worship their qareen. They are a slave to their qareen's demands, and that's what makes them tyrannical, that's what makes them abusive, hypocritical, manipulative. They're pathological liars and narcissistic and all that I speak about hundreds of times. Okay, we don't want to raise kids like this. We want to raise children to be Muslim believers. So when you listen to this podcast, I really want you to keep that in mind. And I also want you to detach from the outcome. This is so important for empathic parents to understand. So you can make all the right moves. You can do everything right in the upbringing of your children. But if they turn out to be narcissistic, it's because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has willed for that to be a part of their life journey. Okay, Allah needs to teach them something about their character, because maybe they have admired certain narcissistic traits in a parent, and Allah wants to teach them something about that. He wants to show them how these traits can ruin their life if they admire these things, these bad traits in other people. So don't attach yourself to the outcome. Don't expect that your children are going to come out as empathic Muslim believers because of your efforts. We make the intention, we make dua, that our efforts will get us there with our children. However, if it doesn't, it's okay. Okay, the outcome is in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's hand. Look at the stories of the prophets. Like Nuh alayhi salam. He is a prophet and his son didn't want to come on the ark. He wasn't one of the believers. Allah gives us these stories in the Quran to show us that even the best people struggled to raise their children and they were disappointed in the outcome of their upbringing. Okay, they were heartbroken over it. Allah doesn't want us to have very high expectations of what's going to happen as a result of our work. Whatever happens in the future is in Allah's hands. We have no control over that. Maybe our children will be later on affected by their environment, affected by their school, affected by their teachers, their friends, and it messes things up along the way. So I just want you to understand that will be a part of their life journey. If they do deviate and make major mistakes and go off the right path, after you doing your best to teach them right from wrong, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not hold you accountable for that because you've done your job, okay? you have fulfilled your role as a Muslim believing parent. The rest is up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everyone has their life journey. Don't attach yourself to the outcome of your work. The outcome is in Allah's hands. All right, so what I want you to do when you listen to this podcast today and all the tips that I give you, I want you to take them on board with the intention that you just enjoy this time with your kids. They have been given to you as a rizq, so just enjoy that rizq. Don't take it too seriously. If you enjoy a relationship with your children, the whole parenting aspect of it will be a lot easier. And never forget that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is so merciful to parents that He only gives them the responsibility over their children until the age of puberty. Okay, so it's only from the age of puberty when a human being is accountable for their deeds, right? So the good they do and the bad they do, they'll be accountable for all of that. However, before the age of puberty, parents are responsible for instilling the right principles and values and beliefs in their children to equip them for life beyond puberty. Okay, so they know right from wrong. Children have to know the basic fundamentals of everything so that they can start making their own decisions in life. Okay, so after the age of puberty, what you're expected to do as a parent is to advise and guide. So in their adult life, if they choose to become atheist, if they choose to become gay, or if they just turn out to be psychopathic, that's not your problem. Okay, Islamically, that is no longer your problem. It only becomes your problem when you did not give your children the right upbringing to begin with. Okay, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ask you, what Islamic upbringing did you give your children? Did you treat your children fairly? Did you treat your children with love and kindness? If the answer to all of that is no, then you'll be accountable for what happens to your children in adulthood. But if the answer to all of those questions is yes, then you're not going to be accountable for any of that. You'll be rewarded for your efforts, and they will be accountable for everything that happened after puberty. Okay, so some adults are really affected by the terrible childhood they had growing up, and that's what made them narcissistic, psychopathic. It came as a result of them being heavily abused by their parents and not learning anything about Islam and good morals or character. They were often neglected, they were often abandoned, they were often pawned off to other people to look after them. No one had time for them. The mother was always out, the father didn't care, he might have abandoned his children. So if the answer is no, those people are going to get a heavy accounting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, again, I just want to make this clear, because I want to emphasize on the importance of instilling the right values and principles and empathy in your children to save yourselves as well, because every parent will be questioned about it. We have to stop feeling like we are failures as parents if the desired outcome doesn't happen, okay? It doesn't come into fruition. And we also need to stop thinking badly of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and live in depression, because when we see a non-desirable outcome from our efforts in raising our children, we don't start to think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not happy with us. Always remember the stories of the prophets, okay? Remember the story of Nuh alayhi salam all the time. It's not because Allah didn't love him that He didn't bless him with a good outcome when it came to his son. No, it was a test. It's just a trial. We're going to get tested and trialed in so many different ways. And usually it's via what we love the most and who we love the most. Okay, so we have to detach from your high expectations and from an unhealthy attachment to our children. I mean, always remember the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam when he was asked by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to sacrifice his son Ismail alayhi salam. And it wasn't because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't love him, or He wanted to punish him, or He wanted to be cruel to him. It was a psychological disconnect for Ibrahim alayhi salam from being overly attached to his son. Okay, so sometimes what we're overly attached to and what we love too much can be the reason and cause of our downfall. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted him to psychologically disconnect. That's why he stopped him. When he was about to do it, Allah said stop. Because it wasn't meant to be a physical disconnect, only a psychological one. So that Ibrahim alayhi salam could be prepared to lose his son at any time. Okay, it was just mental preparation so that in the future, the loss of his son would not cause him to break down and get depression and so on and so forth. Okay, so we have to adopt the same mentality when it comes to raising our children from birth until they grow older. You know, they're going to be your children for life, but your responsibility as a parent actually starts from the person whom you choose to marry until they reach the age of puberty. Now, if you have made a mistake in the person whom you've chosen to marry, then just pick up from where you're at right now. You can always fix it, okay? So if your children are 7, 8 years old right now, it's fine. Just start from here, okay? You can start amending things from here. They are like sponges at the moment. They will absorb everything, and you have the opportunity and the time to be able to turn things around. So it's a bit of a long introduction today, but I just wanted to give you this information to add beneficial context to the podcast. So as always, I'd like to kindly ask you to like the podcast. If it's helped you, do share it with people whom you feel could really benefit from this, and do subscribe to the channel for loads more content to come. If you go to my last post in the communities tab, you can actually see a list of upcoming podcasts that I will release inshallah in due time. So do subscribe if you would like more help in dealing with the issues that I regularly speak about. And if you need one-to-one counselling and coaching, just drop me an email to the address below. It's in the description box. And just include a brief about your case, and I'll get back to you inshallah with availabilities and the programs that I offer. All the information is on the website anyway. So do visit the website if you would like more information about that. So let's jump into it. I am going to categorize this into 3 parts for you. So the first part will be about the emotional side of upbringing. The second part will be the Islamic side of upbringing. And the third part will be about activities that you can do to bring out the empathic traits in your children. So in the emotional category, the first thing I would say would be to encourage communication. Get your kids talking about everything and anything, because that's the only way you will know what's on their mind and how their brains work. I mean, I often hear parents complain about their children talking too much and asking too many questions. Did you know that you can actually know the state of mind your child is in by the questions they ask? And it's fascinating to actually dive deep into the things they say and what they find interesting and what they want to find out about. Okay, just keep an eye on the things that they observe and the things that catch their attention. When I was coming back from Saudi on my last flight, there was a man sitting in front of me, and he was with his son. I think his son must have been about 4 or 5. I think for about 3 hours straight, his son kept asking him questions about everything. And mashallah, the father was really patient with him. He would sit there and he actually answered all his questions until the child got so tired and he knocked out. He just fell asleep. But he would ask so many questions, and not once did his father snap at him and say, "Khalas, you're doing my head in. Just go to sleep. Stop asking so many questions. You're annoying." He didn't say anything like that. He just sat there and he's like, he answered him properly as well. He didn't give him just short, snappy answers. He actually sat there and he answered the questions. And it was primarily because, he wasn't in the middle of doing anything. He had the time with his son to spend and answer all those questions. So, for example, he was like, "Daddy, why do my ears feel funny?" And it was, during takeoff when your ears pop. And his dad was explaining it to him. And then he was like, "Daddy, why can't we see the clouds from the window? Daddy, why is that man's beard orange? Daddy, why am I not allowed any bubble gum? Daddy, why can't I have my own phone? Daddy, why is that child crying all the time?" And he just went on and on and on. And I was just so amazed at his dad. He just answered everything. Like, he just had a really nice conversation with his son, and that's how he bonds with him, right? So allow this kind of communication to go on with your children. Don't make them feel like their questions are stupid. Don't make them feel like they're irritating you and annoying you. If they're asking these questions during a busy time, then just say to them, look, I want you to remember all these questions that you want to ask me, and then later tonight, when we sit together, you can ask me everything. Postpone it for later. Don't dismiss. Don't shut them down, because honestly, the way their minds work will be influenced by what they find fascinating. And honestly, the way he was reacting to his son in the plane was making everyone around him smile. Like, the people next to me were smiling, and the air hostess was smiling. And it was just one guy who asked for some earplugs from the air hostess, and it just made us laugh. So, people like that gain respect from others, because, you can see how gentle that parent is with a child who's just very inquisitive. Okay, so encourage them to ask questions. I remember my mum told me that when we were younger, we used to ask so many questions. So for Eid, my dad bought us this book. It's this massive encyclopedia of a book, and it's called 1001 Questions and Answers for Children. And it was just our favourite book ever. I actually still have it. And it's a great way to occupy children. Okay, get them thinking, get them asking, get them learning. And this will help them with their emotional side, because they're expressing themselves. Okay, allow them to express themselves. And I also encourage you to get them to communicate with their siblings as well. So do like group communication, where you sit every night at the dinner table or afterwards, and everyone has an opportunity to share about their day, share about how they feel. If anyone is sad, everyone knows about it. So for example, a child might be bullied at school. It's good for the siblings to know about this, and it's good for them to see how it's affecting their younger brother or sister or their older brother and sister, and then come together as a family to find a solution. What do you want to do about it? How can your brother help you with this? How can your sister help you with this at school? Like, find solutions together as a family and allow them to come up with them. Okay? Let the children come up with the solutions. Get them thinking. Let them have that compassion for each other. Like, your brother is sad. What are we going to do to make him happy? What are we going to do to cheer him up? Your sister's not feeling very well. What can we do to make her feel better? Who wants to help me make a lemon and ginger tea for her? Get that compassion growing so that they all have this love for one another. They all take care of each other. Teach them how to take care of each other. Teach them how to cheer each other up and look after each other and, be nice to each other when they're unwell, and so on. Now, you might get the odd child here and there who might make fun of the sibling who's being bullied, or they might tease them or say something nasty. Again, in a kind way, without you shouting, screaming, shaming the child. Just say, look, why did you have to say that? Explain why you felt the need to say that. Your brother is really upset about being bullied. What's funny about that? Get them to express instead of just, punishing them and screaming at them. Find the root cause as to why they found it funny or why they found it necessary to say something nasty. Again, this will help them communicate. Okay, and that's where you can teach them, okay, Baba, that's not right. That way of thinking is not right. That's not kind. You learnt this from that person. That person wasn't right. You get a chance to teach them morality. Okay, this is your duty as a parent. When you just jump into the punishment, how dare you speak to your brother like that? Go to your room, or you're having no dinner, or there's no Xbox, or no this, no that. You don't solve the problem. You actually make the problem worse now. So always try to dive into the root cause of why children are nasty to each other, why siblings can't get on, why they're always fighting. Get them to communicate about how they feel. Okay, this is really, really important. So do group activities of communication. If you find that a child is really struggling to say anything, they just sat there quietly and they're like, I don't want to talk. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to say anything. Or they just don't say anything at all. Then play a game. okay? So what you can do, this is what I do with kids when I counsel them. I cut up pieces of paper into squares, and I have 2 jars. In one jar, I put all the positive emotions, and in the other jar, I put the negative emotions. Now, there are no negative emotions in Islam, okay? Just for you to understand this, okay? Because this is something really important for you to teach your children. So if we take anger, for example, anger is not a negative emotion. Your anger is there to protect you when you're feeling violated, oppressed, when someone is doing wrong, and your body reacts in anger. It's actually there to protect you. And when you cry, the tears are actually there to release the trauma from your body, so you're not bottling up the upset, right? You're not bottling up the rage. Allow children to cry. Allow children to get angry. Allow children to scream if they have to scream when they are facing a difficult situation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us the ability to react in these ways because it's healthy for us. And it only becomes a toxic emotion when the emotions are faked to manipulate others. So when people fake cry, when people act in an angry way that's exaggerated, when people scream to intimidate, you can use emotions in a toxic way. It doesn't mean that those emotions are negative and toxic. The way you use them to manipulate others makes them toxic. Okay, and a lot of children learn this from a very young age. That's why a lot of children fake cry and they scream over nothing. And they will have a tantrum over something very petty. This is where your parenting has to step in, and you start to teach children how to manage their emotions properly. Okay, you can't use your emotions to manipulate other people. If you want something, if something is upsetting you that much, you can come and talk to me about it. Or write me a note, or whatever, okay? Just get them to communicate difficult emotions with you, because when they start getting used to having tantrums over petty things and getting overly angry over things and, getting their way when they fake cry, that's going to go with them to adulthood, okay? All of that is going with them to adulthood. And that's why you get loads of women who fake cry all the time and manipulate, and men who use anger to intimidate others, and they have tantrums to scare people. You think that stems from nothing. That stems from being used to it and getting away with it in childhood. So even if a child has an issue with another child and they're harboring resentment, anger, he stole my toys, or he didn't ask me for permission to use my game, encourage the child to go and communicate with that other child. Because sometimes the child will say, well, you go and do it. You tell him. I don't want to tell him. You go tell him. No. Put your foot down and say no. You're the one with the problem with him. You go and tell him. Stand up for yourself and communicate to him what the problem is. So encourage them to solve their own problems from a very young age. Encourage them to stand up for themselves. Encourage them to express how they feel. Because if a child refuses to talk, that's a problem. A child who is constantly talking is far more healthy than a child who says nothing at all. So, going back to the game that I was talking about earlier with the 2 jars, you basically write loads of emotions on the cards or the square piece of paper. So, for example, anger, jealousy, envy, hatred, resentment, all of those things. Because children, when they're happy, they're going to express happiness. You're not going to have a problem with a child expressing happiness. You're going to have a problem with a child expressing their difficult emotions, okay, like these. So have a jar full of all of these cards and have one empty. So take 2 out at a time. So for example, you've got anger and envy. So you ask him, which one do you feel out of these 2? And he might pick anger. So you put envy in the empty jar. And then you take out another one from the full jar, and it might be hatred. Which one do you feel more out of these 2? He'll still pick anger. So you take hatred and you put it in the other jar. And then you take out another card, and it might say resentment. So you ask him anger or resentment, he'll pick resentment. Like, okay, we're getting somewhere now. You put anger in the other jar, and you keep doing that until you exhaust all of the cards. And when you do that, you'll have a good idea of how the child is feeling. For example, they might feel resentment towards their dad because their dad hit them and they thought that it was unjust. As an example, okay? So let's just say that the card that's remaining after you go through all the cards in the jar is resentment. You will ask him, what is it that you feel resentment towards? Who hurt you? Who made you feel this way? And that's what gets the child talking, because now the child feels confident that you understand them, okay, that you figured it out. The child becomes really happy when their parent figures out what's wrong with them. So this is the method I use when I counsel young children and I get them talking about trauma and abuse and all of those things. It works. So you can have a conversation now about resentment and how to deal with resentment. And let's go and deal with this with your dad. You know, why did you feel like it was unfair? And he will explain himself. He will express his emotions about why he felt that it was unfair. And then you ask him to go and have a conversation with his dad. Now, this is very difficult when the dad is narcissistic, because narcissistic fathers love having that power and that control. And they really do dismiss the feelings of their children. So if you're married to someone like that, if, you know, man or woman, then you can make your own deal with the child and say, okay, I'm going to have a chat with your dad about this, but next time I want you to express yourself. You know, I want you to stand up for yourself, and so on and so forth. So you get the child talking. And you can play this game with the siblings as well, okay, to get them talking to each other. And it's a good way to get them talking because kids enjoy games, okay? So when you play this game with them, it's always a good idea to follow it up with something fun. So maybe go into the kitchen and make cookies with them after that. Like, let it be an enjoyable experience. You don't just dismiss them off to their room after that. No, let them do something with you so that they don't feel shame. You know, they feel comfortable being in your presence and they're like, oh, I can talk to my mum. You know, my mum's not angry with me because of how I feel. She's not angry with me because I resent my dad or I hate my dad or I'm feeling anger towards my dad, and vice versa, right? Maybe he or she feels that way towards the mother. So don't make kids feel like you're angry with how they feel. Don't shame them. Just accept what they want to say. Tell them how you're going to sort it out and what they need to do next time, and then go on to do something enjoyable after that so they don't wallow in those emotions. And, you know, the most ideal situation in this kind of scenario would be that you have a chat with the dad and the dad comes and apologizes to his son and says, you know, Baba, I'm sorry. I didn't realize that you felt I did that unfairly. You know, next time, X, Y, Z. Like I said, narcissistic fathers aren't like that. So you're going to have to step into that role and take over. Okay, be the one to apologize and be the one to teach him how to deal with the situation next time so he avoids being hit. He avoids, you know, being in a difficult situation. You need to teach him how to deal with difficult people. He will already know he's got a difficult father, or she knows she's got a difficult mother. Teach them how to deal with that parent. Don't be the parent that's like, you listen to your father and that's it. If he hits you, that's it. It's your fault. You must have done something to deserve it. No, you're going to damage them that way. The best way around it is to teach them how to diplomatically deal with that narcissistic parent, how to avoid that parent and the wrath of that parent. Okay, so for example, if they were fighting with their siblings and they know that the narc parent hates that, just give them some leeway. Look, if you guys are going to wrestle and you want to kick a football around the place and you want to rough play and all of that, don't do it when your dad's around. Give them some leeway to do it. Don't ban them. Don't stop them from being kids. Just give them some leeway so that they don't feel like they can't be themselves and that they can only be themselves when they're at their auntie's house or their uncle's house or with their friends. Okay, we're still talking about young children here. 5, 6, 7, whatever. Don't stop them from being children. Okay, if they're going to run around and, turn their bedroom upside down into some den, let them do it. Let them do it. They're kids, they're inquisitive, they're going to explore everything. Don't take that away from their childhood. It comes with the parenting package, to deal with all their mess and have to tidy up after them all the time. Narc mothers in particular, they're very OCD with stuff like this, so they don't want their kids playing, they don't want their kids getting anything dirty. Don't get your shoes dirty, don't get your t-shirt dirty. You've got to look perfect and pristine all the time, and if you get dirty, I'm going to punish you. It's not a way for kids to live. Let them be kids, okay? That way they'll express themselves emotionally and they won't be terrified of their parents. You can't terrify them into compliance. You can't terrify them into not being who they want to be. If they want to play, if they want to be themselves, let them be themselves. Because if you don't, they're going to have a mental shutdown on you and they won't talk. They will never talk. If you keep moulding them into who you want them to be and you stop them from being kids and getting dirty and, rolling on the muddy grass, well, just let them do it. Seriously, just let them do it. Let them climb trees. If they're going to fall down, hurt themselves, let them learn. Okay, if they're going to eat bugs, let them eat bugs, let them learn. We all did it. Let them learn. If they're going to put their hand in a sheep's pen and the sheep bites them, let them learn. This is a part of being a child. Don't be so strict on them so that they just constantly feel suffocated. Children feel suffocated with parents like this, and they always shut down on their parents. That's why a lot of people find that their children prefer to be around their uncles and aunties who are more fun. Yeah? The more fun options. And that's why a lot of people struggle to co-parent with narcs, because a lot of empaths like routine and they're more strict. But the parent who is a narcissist, they're fun. So the kids always miss the narc parent, because the narc parent is like, you want to roll around in the mud? Go ahead. You want to go to fun fairs? You want to eat candy floss until you throw up? Eat your heart out. I don't care, right? They allow children to be children, especially if those narcissists are man children and women children, because they're still kids inside. Okay? The man child is the child in an adult's body. So he's going to live his childhood through his children. So he's going to do whatever it is that his parents didn't allow him to do as well. Okay, that's why you'll always have to deal with tantrums in children when they come home from being with the narc parent, because they want that fun. However, at the same time, there has to be discipline. There has to be discipline. But I will tell you this. If you are struggling to co-parent with a child because their narc parent really pushes the fun side, don't be angry at that. Alhamdulillah, the kid gets to enjoy the fun side. It might ruin the routine. That's something that you can work on with the child to establish, some discipline. Like, there's no tantrums when you come here. Be grateful that you can go and do all of these things, these fun things with your dad. But when you're here, you need to do your homework. When you're here, you need to go to bed on time. When you're here, you need to brush your teeth. So do it in a kind way. That doesn't make it look like you're taking the fun away from the child and the narc is giving them the fun. No, you do your own fun things at home. I'm going to come on to that inshallah in the third section of activities. But don't push the agenda that you are the boring parent, that you are the strict disciplinary parent, and the narc is the free-spirited, fun parent whom they prefer to be around. Strike a balance when it comes to these things. And one thing I've often noticed with a lot of parents is that when they feel they've lost control over a child who's come home from being with the narc parent, and the child is being a bit rebellious, right? They don't want to brush their teeth, they don't want to have a shower, they don't want to get in the bath, whatever. Then the empath parent breaks down and they start crying in front of the child. They get angry, they get frustrated because they feel like they can't maintain a routine with this child because the narc parent keeps messing it up with all this fun that they're giving the child. Please don't do that. This gives children a lot of emotional problems because now they're starting to see that they're a burden on that empathic parent. Okay, the children don't want to see their parents crying. They don't want to see their parents depressed. and stressed all the time. Do it in a way where the child understands that they have to have a routine, but not in a way that it's crippling you, because you're meant to be their emotional rock. You're meant to be their strength, okay? You're the one they rely on. So when they see their empathic parent break down all the time and cry and have their own meltdowns, it really negatively affects the mindset of the child, and they wish even more to be with the narc parent, okay? Because that's where happiness is. When they're with the empathic parent, it's depressing, it's sad, right? It's not a fun environment to be in, because mummy is always stressed or daddy is always stressed, and they're always upset and they're always angry and they're always snapping at me for not going to bed and not doing this and not doing that. So now they start to fantasize about a life with the narc parent, and that's a problem. So show the child that you're really happy for them, that they've had a lot of fun and all of that, but do fun things with them in your own way and strike a balance so that you're not struggling with them to do daily things like having a bath. All right, it's really important that this emotional side of them is addressed so that you don't have these problems in co-parenting. And this is why I tell people all the time, be patient with your children's mistakes. If a child has a tantrum, let them have a tantrum. Just let them sit on the stairs and have their tantrum. And then when they're done, you say, you're finished. Do you feel better after having that tantrum? Do you feel like you've let it all out? And the child might feel like, oh, that wasn't really necessary, to have that massive tantrum. Believe me when I tell you, kids self-reflect, because sometimes if you teach them how to do things or say things or ask for things, they will realize, oh, I didn't need to have that tantrum. It wasn't necessary. I feel a bit silly now. And you ask them, what's easier? You asking me for this and you telling me this, or you having a tantrum that lasted 2 hours? And they'll be like, yeah, I understand. The tantrum wasn't needed. You teach them. Don't get angry with them for learning. They're still learning how to communicate. They're still learning how to express themselves. Don't punish them for that. If they're going to have a tantrum, let them have a tantrum. Just let them have it away from you so that you're not entertaining it and you're not giving it attention, because you're trying to teach them that this is not the way to communicate. If you want to act like this, you can go and sit in your room and have a tantrum, because I've already told you that you can get what you want from me by asking me in a nice way, or telling me what the problem is in a nice way. If you want to have a tantrum, I'm not going to stop you from having a tantrum, but please go and have it in your room. Okay? If you're going to scream, go and scream in your room. Teach them that it's not okay to project all of this onto other people, and that other people have to tolerate and accept it. Teach them that from a young age. And I promise you they'll stop. You know why? Because children crave attention. So if they're not getting attention for their tantrums and their rages and all of that, they're going to stop doing it. They're going to want what gives them attention. And this brings me on to my next point, which is praising them for their empathic traits. Okay, too many parents are praising their kids for the wrong things. For example, their kid gets a good school report. They only get praised for that. So what this does, it programs the child to attach their self-value to their achievements at school. Okay, that's why you get adults who are obsessed about getting good grades, going to the best colleges, going to the best universities, becoming, surgeons, lawyers, doctors, all of that, because they are programmed to attach their self-worth to that. And then you get some kids who are only praised when they do religious things like praying or doing their wudu properly or fasting a couple of days in Ramadan. Too much emphasis and praise on religious rituals will also make someone attach their self-value and self-worth to religious rituals. And they'll take that into adulthood with them, and that's when they show off. Oh, look at me, I'm a hafiz. look at me, I'm an imam, look at me, I'm a dawah preacher, look at me, I'm this and I'm that. Okay, this is what happens when you only focus on these things. A child might be very beautiful, okay, a young girl, and she's always getting praised for how beautiful she is. Oh, your hair, you look like a little princess, you're my little princess, this, that. There's nothing wrong with doing any of that and praising them in this way. But when the majority of praise is being given to the way a child looks, guess what's going to happen? That's childhood programming right there. They attach their self-worth to their beauty and they take that into adulthood. So now they want everyone to put them on a pedestal because of how they look, because of their beauty, and they become obsessed about their beauty. These are the people who go and get all these procedures done and surgeries done. They invest everything they have into their looks. They believe that they can get everything in life because of their looks. They can fast track their way through life because of their beauty. So it's all good and well to praise children for all of these things, for praying and doing well at school and having good looks and all of that. You should, okay? You really should, because it becomes a part of their self-worth, okay? We don't want children believing that they're ugly. We don't want children believing they're stupid and they're not talented. No, you should always give praise where praise is due. However, the majority of praise should be directed at their empathic traits, okay? Make the praise about their empathic traits the heaviest of them all. And I'll tell you why. It is because when they're older, if they have nothing left in life but a good character, they will always have self-worth. So if they lose all their money, they lose all their looks, they don't achieve something, maybe their business goes bankrupt or they don't find a job, they will know that their self-worth lies in them being a good person. And they will be content with that because it's something that's always been with them since they were young. You know, mum always praised them for being kind and compassionate when their siblings are unwell, or when their mum needed help tidying up around the house, or when they helped to look after their newborn baby brother or sister, or when they gave, a homeless person the 20p in their pocket. These are the things that you should encourage and praise them for, because it's the foundation of them being believers. When the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, when he started his dawah mission, he didn't start it by teaching people how to fast and pray and wear hijab and all these things. He started by teaching people the foundations of a good character and morality. Because there's no point praying and doing all of these rituals if at the end of the day you're not a good person, right? You have a terrible character. So Islam prepares you to be a good person before you learn how to pray, before you learn how to fast, or go to Hajj, or wear your hijab, because you need to learn how to be a believer first and live your life as a believer and act like a believer before you can take on the worship rituals, because that's what you're going to be presenting to the world as a Muslim identity, right? So if you've got a corrupt Muslim identity, you're going to harm the reputation of Islam and Muslims in the process. But if you have a good character and a Muslim identity, then that's dawah for you. So in Islam, this teaching starts from childhood. And that's why it's really important for children to understand right from wrong and to have an Islamic upbringing at the same time, so that they know that it's Islam that makes us civilized, it's Islam that makes us kind-hearted and loving, because we have certain rules to live by, and the way we treat people is a reflection of our level of nafs, okay? So this should be the core foundation of praise when it comes to your children. And then after that, the things that they do from an Islamic perspective. Okay, so the praying, the fasting, the charity, the good deeds, link it to Islam. All of that, link it to Islam. Like, I love your character. I love how you treated your brother today. I love how you took care of your sister. I love how you helped your mum. I love how you did this for your dad and you made him a cup of tea, or, whatever it is that they do, praise them for it, acknowledge it, let them know that you've seen it, because it encourages them to keep going. If you only focus on the wrong that they do and you dismiss the good things that they do, they're not going to bother. They're going to be like, what's the point? I did that for my mom, I did that for my dad, but I still got punished today. I still had my game taken away from me. I still had my toys taken away. We need to stop punishing kids like this, especially when it's over petty things, and absolutely avoid hitting them. Okay, this was something that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ condemned, the hitting of children before the age of puberty. You do not hit children. People who hit children have something majorly wrong with them. You don't hit children. He condemned it. It doesn't matter how naughty they are. They are still innocent in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If they die before puberty, they go straight to Jannah. So they are beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They are special to Allah. If Allah himself is not going to punish children for their wrongdoing, then why are you doing it? If we already know that these children are going to Jannah, what right does anyone have to hit them and punish them in this way? I mean, it really doesn't matter what mistakes they make at this age. They're going to Jannah anyway. So people will collect sins for disciplining innocent children this way, because they're not accountable. In front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they're not accountable for anything. There are better ways of disciplining your children without the need to abuse them in any way. Just teach them to communicate. When you learn how to communicate and talk to me in a respectful way, we'll have a chat. And when you finish your tantrum, we'll have a chat. And when you wash that mess that you've made on the wall, we'll have a chat. Right? Just teach them how to fix their problems instead of rushing to punish them for it. Disciplining children physically is not acceptable in Islam. I'll say that again. It is not acceptable in Islam. You will give them childhood traumas. And you might get loads of people who are like, oh, you're just being oversensitive. Everyone gets hit as children. Everyone gets slapped around with flip-flops as children. Yeah, they do. We've all been through it. I can't count the number of times my dad chased me around the garden with flip-flops. But, it's like, it's not right. It's not right to be disciplining children in this way. I mean, okay, there are some children who get disciplined physically in a light way, like being tapped on the hands, being, slapped lightly with a flip-flop or something like that. Okay, no big deal, right? As long as it doesn't physically harm them, it doesn't leave a mark, it doesn't hurt them, it's fine. There's no problem with that. You are expressing that you are distressed, that you are annoyed, and that they've really crossed a red line. I'm talking about when they reach the age of about 8, 9, 10, because that's when they can start becoming really rebellious and naughty. Tapping them like that, it's not a big deal. It's not considered to be child abuse. But there are some children who go through severe beatings, and parents who have put their children through that will not even smell Jannah. And people who have physically abused their children in other ways, like sexually and by burning them. And go back to my podcast about childhood traumas. It's all in there. I'm not going to repeat it here. But yeah, they're not Muslim believers at all. At all. These people do not smell Jannah. You are doing this to the innocent beloved of Allah. It's not to be taken lightly. So you can figure out with your children the best ways of disciplining them. Sometimes it is the taking away of their toys until they behave, or not allowing them to play with their neighbours that day because they've been really rude. There are some things you can take away for them to understand how upset you are, but fundamentally you really need to work on your communication with them so that you can get to the root cause of their rudeness, the root cause of their rebellion. Okay, this is super, super important. No physical discipline. Try and find other ways of dealing with the children, because wallahi, they'll just resent you. They will hate you for it. There are some people I counsel and they're in their 50s and they are still bitter and resentful towards their parents who inflicted unnecessary physical abuse on them over petty things. Sometimes the child might be singing and the father gets annoyed and the father will just throw a cup at him, or just unnecessary ways of dealing with children that just, fuels hatred. And that, she's in her 50s and she's still holding on to this resentment. So it's not people being overly sensitive. There are adults who feel like their entire childhood was ruined from unnecessary physical abuse. And sometimes verbal abuse as well. Don't verbally abuse your kids either. There's no need to be screaming and shouting, for everyone down the street to be hearing you. Sometimes I hear it when I'm walking down the street. Someone is screaming at their kids. And sometimes they're a few houses down, but they've got their window open. I can hear it. There is no need for that verbal abuse. Your kids are going to remember that as adults. Your kids are not going to forgive you for that verbal abuse as adults. There is no need for it. There are some people who have childhood trauma only from the verbal abuse that was inflicted on them. And that's why they attract people later on in life as adults who treat them in the same way, because they're used to verbal abuse. They marry people who are verbally abusive. They're like, well, my parents treated me like this. This is normal. Okay, it's not a minor thing. It's not a mild childhood trauma to go through. It can really cause long-lasting damage. Okay, so get your kids talking in a healthy way. Get them expressing their emotions. And get them to build their self-worth and their self-value on the good that they do, and tie it with the Islamic rituals that you teach them. I'm going to come on to all the Islamic things in a moment, but this is the core. This is the core of what you need to learn before you start teaching your children how to read Quran, how to pray, and how to do all of those things. So the final part of the emotional category that I want to touch upon is the affection. So I can't emphasize enough how much affection is needed and crucial in the upbringing of children. And I'll tell you something, it's actually more beneficial for young girls to get more affection from their fathers than their mothers. And it's more beneficial for young boys to get more affection from their mothers than their fathers. And this has been psychologically proven to help shape a girl's perception of men, and also for a boy to shape his perception on women. So what affection allows you to do is bond with your children so that they can always trust and talk to you about everything. Parents who are not affectionate are very difficult to talk to, and they're very difficult to approach. There's a coldness to them. There are barriers, in between the child and the parent, because they're quite emotionally unavailable. I'm going to record, inshallah, a separate podcast about the emotionally unavailable mother and how that has a very negative effect on children. So try and get into the habit of hugging your children more, kissing them more, sitting with them on the sofa and just holding them. When you give them a bath, for example, do it gently, wipe their head, stroke their head. Just be loving and gentle towards them. It really does help coax out all the difficult emotions that they're unable to process. They can talk to you, okay? And this is something that you should continue until they're adults, by the way. It's not something that's just safe for children. The best relationships I have seen between adult children and their parents have been those relationships in which affection is present. So a father will still hug and hold his adult sons and adult daughters, and the mother will do that as well. There's the safety of being around your parents who are like that. There's a comfort, it's home, it's family. So, the Prophet Muhammad, he really encouraged people to be affectionate with children and, hug them, kiss them, cuddle them. Try and get into the habit of doing this daily. So even if you're busy with work during the day, make time to sit with them in the evening, maybe like after Isha prayer or before Isha prayer, before they go to bed, and just be affectionate with them. I remember my mom used to do that with us after Isha prayer. So we used to pray as a family, and then we would be affectionate with mum. You know, she would sit there and cuddle us and everything. And we used to really look forward to it because it would come with a story, you know, and all of that. So make a time in the day that your children look forward to, because that's when they get their cuddles, that's when they get held, that's when they can talk. Always make time for that. Even if it's just before they go to bed, make sure that affection is there. When they come to hug you, stop what you're doing and hug them. Even if you're in the middle of cooking, just give them a hug or tell them, as soon as I'm finished with this cooking, I'm going to come and squeeze you, right? If they want to give you a kiss, let them give you a kiss. Don't push them away. Don't dismiss them. Don't act like they're annoying you. Again, don't act like they're irritating you. Let them be affectionate with you. Children are very affectionate by nature. Let them come to you and be affectionate with you and accept it, embrace it, receive it. Okay, because this is the way children show love. They show it through cuddles and kisses and all of that. So if you find that you have a child who is very affectionate, that's their love language. Give it to them back. Okay, allow them to be as affectionate as they want with you and don't show annoyance. If it's an inconvenient time, just tell them, when I'm done with this, we'll have a cuddle on the sofa and watch TV. When I'm done with this, you can call into bed with me and, you know, we can have a bedtime story and whatever. So never dismiss it. Either postpone it or stop what you're doing and give them that affection that they want. Wallahi, it is so comforting for a child to have it. And it gives them that sense of trust and peace. They will always talk to you about everything if you have that affectionate relationship with them. Okay, I promise you. They will always be open to telling you the truth about everything, no matter how uncomfortable it is. They're not going to be scared because they know that there's safety in your arms. You're not going to, you know, physically harm them. You're not going to abuse them. There's a place in your arms that they can go to where they can confess. They can tell you things. They can tell you what their friends are doing. They can ask you questions. And they want to do that in the safety of your arms. They want to do that in a safe space. Okay? Allow children on a daily basis to have that safe space. Because I promise you, if you do not provide them with that, they will get up to all sorts behind your back. And they might even get bullied at school and never tell you about it because they don't feel like they can talk to you. People who are emotionally unavailable are unapproachable. You may not see it in yourself, but that's how children will see it. They will not talk to you. They will talk to other people and it might hurt you that other people know more about your kids than you do. So have this as a part of your daily routine and it will really improve their mental health. And if they're not affectionate as kids, get them into the habit of being affectionate. Because if they're not, if you don't get them used to it from a young age, they're going to be emotionally unavailable when they're older. They're going to be very uncomfortable with emotional touch and physical touch. Okay, they're not going to like it. They're not going to like anyone touching them. And this is going to be a huge problem for them when they get married. They're going to have loads of marital problems over it, especially if they're married to someone whose love language is physical touch. So if you have boys who don't like being hugged, force them into a hug. Yeah, force them to kiss you and all of that. Get them into the habit of doing that. It's healthy for them. Like, no, I don't want to hug you. I don't like hugs. No, you're going to like hugs. Come here. I'm going to squeeze the life out of you. And dads need to do this more than mums. I promise you, the dad is the safety net of the family. He's the leader. He's the qawwam. He needs to be the one who holds everyone together in his arms. He needs to be someone who is affectionate. And if you're married to someone who is not like that, then you need to be like that. You need to compensate and be the safety net of the family. Okay, you be the one who gives your children that. Because having one parent who's like that is better than not having any parent like that at all. It's really going to mess with their mental health if they don't get any physical affection during their childhood, especially when they see other parents give affection to their children. They're going to go to other kids' houses. They're going to go to birthday parties and all that kind of stuff, right? And they're going to see it. And it's going to depress them, and it's going to make them feel unloved and unwanted when they see other dads, hugging and kissing their children. And they're starting to think, well, my dad never does that with me. My mum never does that with me. I don't think my parents love me. I don't think my parents want me. Now they start to feel like a burden. Now they start getting depression. And that leads to behaviour problems and tantrums and over-exaggerating and anger. And you're wondering, where does this come from? Why are they acting like this? And it's because of that. There's a deep-rooted issue where they already feel unloved and unwanted. So they lash out. They lash out, like, why am I not good enough? But they can't express it. They don't know how to express it yet. They have no idea how to feel about all of this and why they don't get affection and love and why they're always physically disciplined and shouted at and dismissed and ignored. They don't understand why all of that's happening because they don't understand adult disorders and personality problems and marital problems. They don't get any of that. So they're going to make up their own story in their head as to why they're being treated in the way they are. And then that manifests in their problematic behaviour, and them being naughty and all of that. And then unfortunately, sometimes this makes matters worse because the more naughty they get, the more physical punishment and verbal abuse they get. And it just turns into a very toxic cycle of this. And that's why a lot of children grow up being really rebellious as soon as they get a chance. As soon as they get a chance to do that one thing their parent told them not to do, they'll be doing it because they feel so unloved. They can't tell you, because they don't understand it yet, that they need affection, they need love, they need you to show love. And if they don't see it, they're just going to be so difficult as children to deal with. I mean, look at this, for example, as a case. You get loads of imams, preachers, scholars that, you would think that they are fantastic role models. They teach their children the deen, all of that. But their children become very rebellious after puberty. They go the other way. Why? Because these people don't know how to give affection. They didn't form bonds like that with their children. They put themselves on a pedestal where my children serve me, I don't serve my children. I teach them what I need to teach them. I teach them tawheed, I teach them aqidah, I teach them haram and halal. That's it. I teach them right from wrong. That's it. There is no emotional connection between parent and child. That's why a lot of children who grow up in very Islamic homes go the other way after puberty because they do not have any emotional connection to their parents. It's always just been about halal and haram and right and wrong and do this and do that. It's never really been about, forming those kinds of bonds with children. Because when you have children who are raised with those healthy emotional bonds, you'll have an amazing relationship with them in adulthood. They will always want to come back to you. They will always want to look after you. They will always be calling you, asking about you. But if there has not been any emotional connection and affection in a child's upbringing, they'll run away from their parents in adulthood. They won't want anything to do with their parents. They won't ask about them when they're sick. They'll move as far away as possible. They'll get married to someone on the other side of the planet. They don't want anything to do with their parents after that. And they might even rebel completely against every principle their parents raised them with. This is the importance of affection. If there's no affection, you're at risk of having this as an experience when you're older. Okay? It's really important for you to know that. It doesn't matter how old your children get, always hug them, always kiss them, always hold them, and always be open to listening to them with an open, non-judgmental heart. Okay, you're only there to advise and guide them. You're not going to be accountable for their sins. You're not going to be accountable for what they do and their decisions. Just listen to what they've done. Listen to the mistakes they've made. And be comforting, Be the guide they need. Otherwise, they'll never come to you. Instill this from children at a young age. Okay, on a daily basis. Let them have something or a time to look forward to in the day because they know that this is my special time with my parents. This is when we all get on the sofa and, get under a blanket and we all just cuddle up and watch something and we get to talk. Even if you're a single parent, do that with your child. I know amazing single dads who do this with their kids, and amazing single moms who do this with their kids. And you can tell how much the child loves their father or loves their mother because they really enjoy that time on the sofa with a blanket or in bed with a story with their parent. You know, when I counsel children, I always ask them, what's your favourite time of the day? You know, they might be going through a divorce or something, and most of them say that time. You know, when I'm with daddy in bed reading and he's reading me a story, or when I'm with mummy on the sofa and we're having snacks and watching a movie, they are always a child's favourite times. It's what they remember, and it's what they treasure the most as adults in their childhood memories. Okay, so can't emphasize on this enough. This is the section that I have focused the most on because it's the foundation for everything else I'm going to list for you. I will try and whiz through them as quickly as I can because I don't want this podcast to drag on for too long. But that's the core foundation of parenting. It's all in this section. All right. So I will move on to the Islamic upbringing now, and I'll just give you some tips on things to do that will make an Islamic upbringing enjoyable for you and your kids. So the best way to start this would be to actually talk about how to love Allah before fearing Allah. And this is so important because there are far too many children who are taught about the wrath of Allah and the punishments and hellfire, and they're taught that if you don't pray you're going to go to hell, if you don't listen to your parents you're going to hell, if you don't behave you're going to hell, or you're going to get punished. This creates a deep resentment within children for the deen when they're older. So they always look at religion as being something barbaric, and they look at Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as being a creator who is tyrannical, who will throw them into hell for their mistakes and for minor things, right? Because that's what a lot of parents teach their children, and they do this for control purposes. So if they can scare their kids into praying and scare their kids into compliance, then it works for the parents because maybe it worked on them in their upbringing. So changing this perception of Allah that they have is so important. You need to raise children to have a love for Allah, a very deep love, and to see our Creator as someone who is merciful, loving, caring, compassionate, forgiving, because that's who He is, right? That's who He is. If you look into the Quran, you will find that the word punishment is mentioned 117 times, and the word forgiveness is mentioned 234 times. That's double the number of times punishment is mentioned. And the reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions the punishments and the hellfire is because there will be people who will be fear-driven. Okay, there are people who are motivated by fear, and there are some people who are motivated by love. So the people who are motivated by fear, these verses will appeal more to them, and they will be more likely to stay away from the major sins and comply with Islamic law out of fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the punishment of hell and the day of judgment and so on. And there will be people who will be motivated to comply with Islamic law and do what's right in Islam out of love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah wants these people to be the majority. He wants them to be the majority. And that's why the word forgiveness has been mentioned double the amount of times as punishment, because Allah wants us to see Him as a loving creator and not as a creator who wants to catch us out or punish us or make life difficult. Okay, Allah says that even if your sins are as great as the mountains, He will forgive you if you repent on time. And of course, you wouldn't have dragged other people into those sins. So if you've hurt other people, then these are not included. The sins that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about that are as great as the mountains are those that are between us and Allah. The things that happen in secret and do not involve the oppression or the abuse of others. So it's really important that children grow up with this deep love for Allah. And when they have a deep love for Allah, they want to learn more about Him. When you teach children that Allah is tyrannical and He will punish you for every tiny thing that you do, children will not want to get to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They will have no desire for it. And they will see Islam as being very difficult. They will see Islam as a religion that's made their parents harsh, and so on, okay? So it's really important that you teach your children about Allah, and you teach them that Allah punishes those who never repent, who are arrogant and have those satanic traits. Okay, all those satanic traits of narcissism and psychopathy, these are the people who will be subjected to the wrath of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But your average person is not going to be subjected to that. Okay, hell has been made for the worst of creation, not for the people who are trying every day to be good, not for those people who are trying every day with their struggles and their jihad and nafs. Hell is not for those people. Those horrible punishments are not for those people. They are for people who murder the innocent, right? Who oppress people on massive scales, who are tyrannical world leaders. These are the people who will be subjected to that type of hell. So when you put children on the same level as those demons, you are causing a huge injustice to them, and you are taking away such a beautiful opportunity for them to love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, you can't be telling children that they're going to be thrown into hell when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has saved them from it. Again, I go back to that same point. Allah says that every child who dies before the age of puberty is going straight to Jannah. So how can we tell children that they're going to be thrown into hell if they don't do this and don't do that? Can you see how you're going to seriously mess up their psyche and their perception of the deen? Of course you will, if you're going to be threatening them with that. And that's what narcissistic parents do. And that's why so many people grow up not wanting anything to do with the deen. And even if they practice it with bitterness. They practice it like they're forced. Like they don't really want to be Muslims, but they're doing it to save face and to save their family's reputation and all of that. So you're taking away something so beautiful when you use Islam in this way to discipline your children. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told you they will not go to hell, who are you to say that they are? Who are you to use that as a threat and as a discipline? You absolutely cannot. So the most important part of raising children as Muslims and as believers is to actually focus only on how wonderful Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. From the age of puberty onwards, you can start teaching them about hellfire. You can start teaching them about punishments. You can start introducing this. But when you're teaching children about the deen, you have to allow them to grow that love within their hearts for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because if they don't, if you're only going to pump into them the punishment side of it, you're going to lose your children when you're older. So the best exercise I can give you to do this would be to study the 99 names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with your children. And you can do this by purchasing children's books about it and going through the 99 names and discussing it with them. Okay? So this is something that will really help children develop their fundamental understanding of who Allah is. This is so important. And it's also important for them to know who our Prophet is. So when they learn about the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, they will grow up with an understanding that Islam has already given us a role model. So even if they don't have the greatest father figure in their life or any male role models in their lives, they will be able to look up to the character of the Prophet as being something to aspire to. Okay, because you are teaching them this from a young age, that when the Prophet was angry, he did this. And when he was sad, he did this. And when he was confused, he did this. And then you can teach them about the angels and Jibreel alayhi salam, and there's so much that children will find fascinating from stories of the prophets, stories of the message that Muhammad alayhi salam came with. So, children like to learn about these things, and they have loads of questions about these things and their history. Teach them about their history. It is so important that they learn about their identity and who they are as Muslims. Let them fall in love with Islamic history. There are so many children's books about this. Let them learn about Palestine. Let them learn about the importance of being a Muslim. Let them learn about all of these things. And I promise you, you will have a child who will grow up with a very strong sense of self. Okay, a very strong identity. They will have their ethnic identity that they will be proud of. And they will have an Islamic identity to be proud of. And this creates a strong character. Okay, so allow them to learn and ask questions about Islam. Even if you find those questions ridiculous, let them ask. Because if you don't let them ask, they will start to figure out things in their own head and they could get it wrong. Okay, or they might go and take their information about Islam from the wrong people, as we see many people doing now. As parents, it's important to know where they get their education and what they're learning about Islam. So please don't just send them to the mosque where they do talk about punishments and hellfire and this and that. You know how many children hate going to the mosque? I would say 80% of the children I counsel really don't like going to the mosque for their Quran classes and Arabic classes. They hate it. They absolutely hate it because the teacher's not good and the teacher's always talking about punishment and always talking about hell. They really don't enjoy going. And they have no idea what they're studying. They don't understand the meaning of what they're studying. So when you do this, when you put them in this situation where they're forced to learn about Islam in the local mosque, because that's where everyone's sending their kids, you lose your kids. You really need to make more effort into signing them up to Quran classes and Arabic classes that they will enjoy. I swear to you, you sit with any of your kids and they'll tell you how much they dislike going to the mosque. You can't allow it for it to continue being an unpleasant experience for them. It has to be a pleasant experience. What outcome do you expect if your children are being taught Islam and they're not enjoying 1 minute of it? They don't enjoy it. You need to find other alternative ways to teach them. Even if it's online, even if it's traveling a bit further, to go to a better teacher, to go to better classes, a better mosque, where they have the opportunity to actually enjoy what they're learning. Okay? So that's my 2 cents on that. Because always remember, you don't always necessarily respect whom you fear. But when you do something out of love for someone, you'll do it genuinely. Okay, not everyone respects who they fear. And you don't want children having that kind of relationship with Allah. Okay? So another thing you can do is show them cartoons that are more Islamic. So for example, Umar and Hannah, I find that so adorable. Seriously, whenever I go to my friend's house and she has it on for her children, I watch it with them. And I just think it's so lovely how it teaches children morality and Islamic principles and adhkar and things like that. So this is something that children really need, like how to learn to say Alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar, Subhanallah, how to treat your parents, all of that. It's beautiful. So I definitely encourage those types of programs for them to watch and get into the habit of teaching children the morning and evening adhkar. So just teach them the basics of Ayatul Kursi, قل هو الله أحد, قل أعوذ برب الناس, and قل أعوذ برب الفلق. And that will protect them from their own qareen. So I'm going to do another podcast, inshallah, about the relationship children have with their own qareens. Okay, it's a subject for another day, but they need to be protected from evil spirits as well. So it's really important that they don't go to bed before they read these adhkar. And another thing you can do with them as a family activity is to read Quran together. And you can set children a challenge of reading the Quran in the best way they can. So you can have a reward system for it. Whoever reads the best, like whoever's tajweed is really good or their recitation is beautiful, they get a treat. Okay, treat them for it. And it will cause the siblings to compete in something that's really good. Okay? I remember we did this as children, and we would really make effort to read the Quran in the best way possible, and they could come up with their own tajweed and their own way of reading the Quran that they enjoy. Let them find their own style of recitation that they enjoy and let them compete in it. And if you have boys, let them compete in who can say the adhan in the nicest way possible. This will give them a sense of leadership from a very young age. So get into the habit of praying together as a family. Again, I know it's not usually possible during the day unless it's a weekend, but always make sure that the Isha prayer is prayed as a family. And if you have sons, then they can each take it in turns every day to call the adhan and maybe lead the prayer. Okay, give them that sense of responsibility and leadership when it comes to Islamic matters. And let them learn how to say the adhan in the nicest way possible. Let them compete in it. Okay, who can say the adhan in the nicest way? And this was the practice of Muslims from the Islamic Golden Age. Your sons will be carrying on the legacy of Bilal radiallahu anhu, who was the first man to make the adhan because his voice was so beautiful. So train your boys to be proud of something like this and to carry on that legacy, because we need boys like this, right? We need young men who are proud to read the Quran and lead the prayer. So if you have boys, make sure that they take it in turns to lead the prayer every night and that they do a good job of it. Okay, they have to do a good job of it, and let there be a reward system for it. Now, just a quick note before I carry on. There's a mistake that some families make, which is to focus everything on Islam. And I advise against this. Okay, don't make everything Islamic in your upbringing with children. Allow there to be flexibilities in certain things. So, for example, when you read them bedtime stories, don't let them all be Islamic stories and stories about the prophets and so on. Mix and match. So sometimes read them a bit of Peter Rabbit, Little Red Riding Hood, The Flying Snowman, all of that. Like, insert them in between the Islamic teaching, because they're going to want to fit in at school as well with children who are not Muslim. So it gives them something to talk about at school. And when you only make it Islamic, you isolate your children from healthy integration with children from other backgrounds. Okay, so you find loads of these children's storybooks and they teach morals as well. Some of them are really beautiful, and children can benefit from those too. So don't be too strict in your Islamic upbringing. Let there be flexibility. Let them watch the cartoons they want sometimes that are not Islamic, but always make sure that they do get their dose of Islamic reminders every day. Okay? And environment plays a huge part in this as well. If you want your children to have a strong Muslim identity, don't raise them in areas where there are hardly any Muslims. Okay, take them to areas where there is a Muslim community, because when you take them to areas where there are no Muslims, they will really struggle with their identity. And this can be a crisis. This can be a real serious hardship for children. They could be subjected to bullying and all sorts. I mean, when we first moved to the UK, my dad took us to a Church of England school, and we were the only Muslims in the whole school, and it was really hard. I know now that was a part of my life journey to have that type of upbringing, because alhamdulillah, I have a mother who did stay at home with us, and she taught us Arabic and the fundamentals of Islam. So we didn't miss out on an Islamic upbringing at home, but it was very difficult integrating those principles at school because all the children were English and they were Christians. And my father, he wanted to raise us in that area because of all the corruption that he had seen previously in Muslim communities. So he wanted us to be raised far away from all of that. And it was difficult. It was difficult. I know the benefits of it now as an adult, but when you're a child, being that different in an environment that is so alien to you can be traumatizing. So do bear in mind the environment you are trying to raise your children in, because it will have a huge influence on how they turn out. Especially if you're not at home with them, teaching them about Islam and giving them that time to educate them properly. Okay, so if you're relying on a Muslim community to do that, then make sure you're living in the right Muslim community. So moving on, it is really important for you to teach children how to make dua. So this will help to build their tawakkul, their trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and their reliance on Allah. Okay, so every time they want something, get them into the habit of asking Allah first before they ask you. And this will strengthen their iman as well, because if they do, inshallah, get what they want, it will give them a better relationship with Allah. Okay, so dua is really important. Make sure they spend some time after they pray doing their tasbih and spending time asking Allah for what they want. Don't just let them rush off after salah. Get them into the habit of just sitting and relaxing and communicating with Allah. Okay, it will make them spiritual. It will make them people of substance. So let them sit there for 10 minutes and ask them to ask Allah for everything they want in life, and for Allah to only give it to them if it's good for them. Okay, this eliminates the disappointment they will feel when they don't get what they want. Okay, we don't want them blaming Allah. We don't want them doubting Allah. And we don't want them feeling that Allah is not listening to them and is ignoring them because their dua hasn't been answered, or it hasn't been answered in the way they wanted. So get them into the habit of adding to their dua, if it's good for me. So if they don't get what they have asked for, then they know it's because Allah knows it's not good for them. Get them into that mindset. Okay, because there are too many adults right now who are resenting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for not giving them what they want, because what they're asking for may not be good for them. So Allah is protecting them by not giving them what they want. So let children understand that. Okay, let children understand that, so that they do not have a bad perception of Allah. All that teaching you did to show them how loving and merciful and kind Allah is, don't ruin it by missing this important puzzle piece that they need to understand that even when Allah does not give them what they want, it's out of His love. Okay, it's out of His protection and out of His wisdom. And they accept it. You know, when they accept it from a young age, they won't have that resentment. It's also a good idea to get them into the habit of going to Friday prayer, going with you to Eid prayer, and making a big deal out of Eid. Okay, so you know the way that they will see Christian children and other children celebrate Christmas and they get their gifts and they have all their decorations. Do the same for children at Eid. You know how many children miss out on a wonderful celebration at Eid because their parents can't be bothered? You know, it's their time. Eid is something that the Prophet Muhammad said that children really enjoy. So let them go shopping for new clothes. Let them be excited to wear their Eid outfit. And make a big deal of decorating the house. Okay, the same way people decorate their houses for Christmas, and like do something really nice. Put balloons up, put banners up, Just do something really nice in the house that makes children feel it's Eid. Yeah? And get them gifts. Buy them gifts, buy them the toys they wanted, wrap them up and put them in the living room and let them be excited about waking up in the morning and opening their gifts, and let them enjoy that experience, because if they're not allowed to celebrate Christmas, which we know is forbidden in Islam, then give them an alternative. Give them an alternative to look forward to in the year. They've got 2 Eids in the year. Make something special of it. And also, a practice you can get children into from a young age is to prepare gifts that they can give to people from poor backgrounds. Okay? So there are charities that collect gifts and toys for children who are in need. Get them into the habit of giving when they receive as well. So it just gives them an opportunity to think about children who are not as fortunate as they are, okay, to have everything they want, and they think about them at Eid. Now, when it comes to rituals like praying, fasting, wearing the hijab, as we know, children are not obligated into doing these things, but if they want to participate, then encourage their participation. So if they want to try fasting, even if it's just a few hours during the fasting hours, or they want to pray, or they want to wear the hijab, let them do it, okay? Let them participate, but do not force it upon them as an obligation. Do not force it upon them as an obligation. So they need to come and do it out of free will. Don't force them to pray, they'll resent it. Don't force a hijab on them, they'll resent it. Okay? Don't force them to fast, they'll resent it. I mean, I see some parents put a hijab on an 8-year-old girl. It's not an obligation for her to be wearing the hijab at 8 years old. If you are in a Muslim community where young girls wear the hijab, it's like a social norm, then it's not a big deal, right? She's not going to feel out of place by you doing that. It's still too young for her to be covering, but I understand that some parents might want to get their daughters used to wearing a hijab from a young age, but it's not an obligation, right? You shouldn't be forcing this on children, especially if they're not living in a Muslim community. And one of my childhood traumas was actually being made to wear a hijab at the age of 10. And that's because my father found a Valentine's card in my bag from a boy at school. And he said, that's it. You're not going back to school unless you have a hijab on. And as you can imagine, I really wasn't happy about that, going back to a Church of England school and being the only one there wearing a hijab. But it was forced on me at the time. I had no choice. And I did go to school on that Monday morning with a full hijab on. And it was a complete nightmare. It was a disaster for me. I hated it. I hated every minute of it. So it's things like that that can give children such trauma because you've made them so different in an environment where they shouldn't be in the first place. Okay? So I see a lot of parents do this to their children. They don't want them growing up in Muslim communities, but at the same time, they want them to be practicing Muslims elsewhere. But then you put your child at risk of being bullied or being outcast, whatever it is, you put them at that huge risk because they stick out like a sore thumb in that environment because of you forcing Islamic principles onto them from a very young age. So I just wanted to mention that because it is a part of Islamic upbringing to choose the right environment for them. All right, so it's not a difficult childhood for them. One thing that my mum actually did that she was very good at was teaching us why things were haram. So I'll give you an example. She used to teach us about, eating pork, and if you go to a birthday party, don't eat the little sausages on the sticks with the cheese, and don't do this and don't do that. And once my brother did, and she called us to have a look at a book, and it had loads of pictures of the worms and parasites that live in pig meat and how they can live in your body. I'm telling you, he never touched a sausage again. We were also grossed out to the max. We didn't go near anything like that. She showed us the same about cigarettes and what it does to your lungs and what happens to your body when you eat the sweets that are not halal, the gelatin from the cows and the pigs. Oh my God, my mum did an amazing job at putting us off all that kind of stuff. So sometimes it helps to educate your children on why things are haram, because it helps them make logical sense of it. And when children can make logical sense of something, they're more likely to give it up and not want it anymore. Okay, so it was a smart thing my mum did, and it works. It really does work on children. And another thing you can do is encourage a good deed a day. So you can have a chart up in the house and they can tick it off if they've done a good deed. So it's not so that they can brag about the deed or show off about it, but it's to get them into the routine of not letting a day pass where they haven't done something nice for someone. Okay? And sometimes that nice thing can be for themselves too. So don't get them into the habit as well of always doing things for other people. That's what turns them into people pleasers. Let them have days when they do something nice and kind for themselves. So have a chart up on the fridge or in their room where they can tick off if they did something nice for themselves or for other people that day. And then every week you can sit with them and say, look, I've noticed this week you've managed to do something nice for someone every day, but you didn't do anything nice for yourself. Why did you not do anything nice for yourself? It gets them thinking, okay? And then you can correct it. The week after that, they'll start doing more for themselves as well. So they have to understand that they need to pour into themselves and not just other people when it comes to good deeds and showing kindness and love to people. They have to show that to themselves too, but not in a way that makes them arrogant or entitled. Okay? So it's really important that they get into the habit of doing that and treating themselves. So they can use their pocket money to spend money on their favourite chocolate bar or buying a game or even buying a book. Okay, whatever it is that they want to do for themselves, let them do it. But it can't be too much of this and it can't be too much of doing things for other people. It needs to be a good balance of both. And what comes with that as well is being able to hold him or herself accountable. So if they do not do a good deed that day, or if they've done something bad that day, they can talk about it and they can admit that they were wrong and they can apologize and they can be okay with holding themselves accountable or having someone else hold them accountable. So don't shame them when they've done something wrong. Allow them to admit it. Allow them to talk about what they did wrong and you gently correct them. Okay, ask them, how can you be better next time? What are you going to do to fix this? What are you going to do to improve on this? And let them come up with the solution. Don't always tell them what they have to do. Sometimes let children think of their own solutions and then show them how proud you are of them for being so smart. Okay, praise them for it. Praise them for being able to problem solve and praise them for holding themselves accountable. Because the more you praise these types of actions, the more likely they're going to be empathic when they're older and they won't struggle with being wrong. They won't struggle with saying sorry. And they won't struggle in their adult life when it comes to people being upset with them over things that they've done that they just don't want to hold themselves accountable for because it makes them uncomfortable. And adults who are very uncomfortable with being held accountable are people who were not familiar and comfortable with it as children. So when you get them into the habit of saying sorry and fixing their mistakes and improving, then it makes it easier for them in adulthood, because their childhood programming has led them to that type of behavior. So get them into the habit of it. So if they made a promise to do something and they didn't do it, hold them accountable and allow them to make it up to you or to make it up to themselves, because they're meant to do a good deed a day and so on. Okay? Don't let it slip, because if you allow it to slip from childhood, then it will continue into their adulthood. So that's the section on Islamic upbringing. And of course, there are many other things I could mention, like teaching them how to, respect elders and all of that. But these are the fundamental things that if you manage to master them, then everything else will become very easy, inshallah. So I'll move on now to the activities you can do as an empathic parent with your child, whether you're co-parenting with a narcissist or you're a single parent, or you do have a narcissistic husband or wife. So the first thing would be quality time. Quality time as a family is so important for children. Okay, get together and do things. So they could be movie nights, maybe cook together one day. If you're making pizzas, get the kids involved. If you're making a cake, if you're making cookies, muffins, whatever, something simple, get the family involved. And not just the children, but your partner too. Okay, so mum, dad, the siblings, everyone comes together to do a family activity for quality time. If you're not into any of that, then you could do a camping trip together. You could do weekends away. You could do game nights. Lots of kids really enjoy game nights. So these could be board games, card games. They could be games like charades. Whatever it is that they like to do it as a family. This will really help them to value family and quality time. And it will shape boys to be family men, and it will shape women to really value the closeness of family. So they will be more likely to be traditional in their outlook on marriage when they're older. So if you're a single father and you have a daughter, I really advise that you do girly things with her sometimes. So maybe go to the cinema with her and watch her favourite Disney movie, okay? Or take her out to dinner. Buy her flowers. Do things like that for your daughters, Maybe brush her hair, do her hair. And just spend that quality time with her. Wallahi, you will bond with her so much. She will absolutely adore you. She will brag about you to all her friends. I promise you. Every father who I've seen has been like that with their daughter, has an amazing relationship, mashallah, with their daughter. Okay, the Prophet Muhammad said that a man who raises 3 girls in the best way possible, like this, in the most loving way, and protects them and cares for them and nurtures them, he gets a fast-track ticket to Jannah. And then a Sahabi asked him, Ya Rasulullah, what about a man who only has 2 daughters? He said, even the man who has 2 daughters, if he treats them this way and raises them this way, he will get a fast-track ticket to Jannah. And it said that had a man asked him about 1 daughter, the Prophet Muhammad would have said the same. And the reason for that is because men have to meet girls at a very deep empathic and emotional level for them to have a connection like that with them. And not every man can do that. Not every man is empathic like that. So the fast track ticket to Jannah is saved for those empathic men who make the effort to give their daughters that safety and that love and that care. Okay, they're not harsh, they're gentle with them, and they go out of their way to be their friend. Being your child's friend is also very important. You need to be their best friend. You need to be the person they run back to. And that's where, like I said before, affection comes into place. A father who cuddles his daughters, who's affectionate with them, he kisses them, he tells them he loves them, he tells them they're beautiful, he tells them he's proud of them, and he praises all of their beautiful traits and their empathic traits, this is a wonderful father, because he instills self-value and self-love into his daughters, and he gives them confidence. Okay, they're not going to be narcissistic or codependent. They're going to be girls who are very much loved, and they have that confidence and the backbone of a father. That's why it's such a highly rewarded role in Islam, to be that kind of father and to also be that type of mother. Okay, so when it comes to women, it is really important that they also do activities with their sons. And I've seen boys really enjoy trips with their mums, like days out with their mums. It could be dinner. Again, it could be cinema. It could be a hike. It could be horse riding. It could be a physical activity. They just want to see that their mum is cool. My mum does fun things with me. My mum is involved in my life. And I can bond with my mum over activities. Boys love that. Boys absolutely love that. And of course, it's a father's responsibility to teach boys about healthy masculinity and how they should treat their sisters and how they should treat their mum, so that they can grow up with a healthy perspective on women. This is a father's role, okay, to eliminate the misogyny and abuse that boys can inflict on, their female relatives. And it's also a mother's role to teach girls how to be feminine and how to treat their male relatives well, how to respect their father, how to respect their brothers, and so on and so forth. So everyone has their roles to play, and each parent is due their own quality time with their sons and their daughters. So it's important for fathers to go out as well and go on trips with their sons, play football with their sons, take them to the mosque, take them to Islamic events. It's a father's responsibility to do this, with his children. And it's a mother's responsibility to also make sure that her daughters are being raised in the right environments, that she also takes them to, Islamic lectures and to enjoy going to weddings and parties together, to enjoy shopping together, to enjoy going to cafes together and having that quality time to talk. This can be a habit from a very young age. When I go to my local cafes, I see mothers with their 3-year-olds in cafes. They're having their milk and mother's ordered a coffee, and she's spending quality time with her child in the cafe. And I see men in the park with their sons, and they're 4 or 5 years old. It's really important to get involved in activities with your children so that they feel that you're present. And this will help them to form healthy relationships when they're older. They will gravitate towards people who are like their parents. And as I've told you before in previous podcasts, girls tend to gravitate towards men who are like their fathers, and boys tend to gravitate towards women who are like their mothers. So if you have a healthy home and you're raising your children to be empathic, then the chances will be a lot less that they will be attracted to narcissistic people. And another way you can be present with your kids is to help them with their homework projects, especially when they are art projects. So identify what they're good at, identify their passions, their skills, the things they really enjoy doing. If you see that they really enjoy baking, encourage it. Okay, encourage these skills. If they enjoy drawing, painting, maybe sign them up to a class out of school and let them develop their skills. Let them go to cooking classes with other children. Let them learn how to paint better. Let them learn how to draw. Buy them tools and give them educational resources so that they can improve on their drawing. This will really help them develop their self-confidence, and it will give them something to occupy their time with. It's a passion that they can pursue from a very young age. Okay, so when children are very submerged in their passions, they become happy children. These children are often very happy because their parents give them the space and the encouragement to do what makes them happy. Okay, try and get them out of the house more. Try and push them into pursuing their passions so that they're not stuck in front of a TV all day or an iPad all day, or they're just obsessed about having your phone and playing games on there. You want to get them away from that as much as possible. Identify their skills and try and hone in on them. Okay, because that is what is going to build their character and identity as they grow older. And get them involved in community projects and community events. I mean, one thing that I used to love being a member of was the Brownies when I was younger. And we used to do loads of wildlife treks and activities. And I learnt so much as a child being a part of the Brownies Club. So if you have clubs like that for children in your area or with their school, sign them up. Sign them up to them because they can be so educational and super fun. I don't know how much they've changed since the 90s, but, you know, they were absolutely wonderful for expanding our mindsets at the time. And until now, I'm a member of wildlife trusts and everything in my area. And when I go, so they email you and they text you about upcoming events. So, for example, I'm really into nature and all those things, so I get notifications of when it's badger season or hare season or deer season, and they organise groups where we can go and view the deer, photograph the deer and learn about them. And sometimes I see single parents or families with their children, and I just love how in awe children are when they see animals or when they learn about the trees and the plants and insects and, you know, when they see wild animals and things like that. So, you know, children are fascinated by these things. This is so much better for them than being stuck in front of a TV or playing video games. Okay, let them explore, let them learn about the world. And when they learn about the world, you can incorporate Islam into it as well. I mean, even if you don't have these events and treks and hikes in your area, if you live in the city, you can watch documentaries with them. Go on the Discovery Channel or watch the David Attenborough series on Our Planet and let them learn about the world. Let them learn about the environment, climates, wildlife, animals, insects, birds, and let them understand how amazing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is as an artist. Okay, let them see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from that lens and how wonderful Allah is as a creator. So if they're into art, they like drawing, painting, approach the subject of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from that perspective. Let them watch, you know, documentaries about birds and all their colours. There's actually a documentary called Life in Colour. It's narrated by David Attenborough, and he's not going to teach them about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's your job. It is an absolutely stunning documentary that will really capture the attention of your children. Okay, watch these documentaries with them. They will love it when it becomes a family activity. Don't just stick them in front of the TV so that you can get some peace and quiet. No, make it a family thing. This is what I grew up with, and I know how much it impacted how I view Allah, okay, because of all the wonderful things He created. It allows children to ponder and think about the world, right? Self-reflect. And it allows them to be curious. It allows them to actually be interested in something other than the material of the world. Okay, the material that has no benefit. Get your children in contact with nature. Let them form a relationship with nature, and I promise you they'll be more empathic when they're older. You will instill a sense of spirituality in them when they learn to love being around animals, being in the countryside, and so on and so forth. So even if you live in the city, it's fine. Just make sure that every now and again you take your children to the countryside. You let them be in the presence of wildlife. Even if it's by you taking them to farms. Okay, there are loads of children's farms and children's zoos. Take them there, let them learn. Let them learn about creatures and even space. If they have a fascination with planets and the moon, the sun and the galaxies and stars and all of that, you can take them to planetariums. There are loads of places you can take children to learn about the world and to learn about themselves as human beings. So I really highly encourage this. And children being in the presence of animals will always help them to become empathic. So maybe take them horse riding, okay? Do things like that with them. Children's bonds with animals, especially horses, can be so deep and so special. I know this because I grew up with horses. And so I know how much animals can impact the mental health of a child. If you are in a position to do so, perhaps consider getting them a pet. Okay, get them a pet cat, a pet rabbit, guinea pig, something they can look after, even if it's just a hamster. Let them feel responsibility towards taking care of an animal because their survival depends on this child. Feeding them and, cleaning them and giving them water. Give them that sense of responsibility and leadership and protection of this tiny creature and let them bond with the creature. I don't recommend birds in the house at all. I'm really not with that. But, get them a small furry friend and that can really help the mental health of a child. And if you don't like animals in the house, if you don't want pets at all, or you can't have pets in your house, then take the children to rescue centres, okay? Take them to wildlife rescue centres and they can actually volunteer to look after some animals that are there. So they might, be given a syringe to feed milk to kittens or to help put a bandage on a cat's leg or something. It will just give them that opportunity to exercise their empathy and to help it grow. Okay, I used to do this when I was younger. I used to absolutely love going to rescue centres. And it was actually the best thing about my dad, that he didn't mind being around animals. So we had a lot of pets growing up. And little did he know, this is what helped me to be empathic today. Because growing up with animals and growing up with a love for nature has really shaped my personality. So going to rescues and helping animals in need, animals that are unwell, it's very rewarding for children. Very, very rewarding, and they'll feel proud of themselves. Okay, so get them involved in charities. Maybe, group them with their cousins and make a thing out of it where they choose a charity to go and do some volunteer work in. Check out your local charities where children can come along and help and volunteer. This is a great activity for them. You can do this like once every month, once every 2 months, and it just gets them into the habit of doing something nice and feeling that satisfaction that they've been able to exercise their empathy. Because if children grow up not caring about these things, they will grow up to have no compassion and no concern for other people's feelings or, contributing in a good way to society. And animals are also a part of our society, and we have a duty to look after them as well because they are also the creation of Allah. So it doesn't make it less of a charity than others. So I'm just suggesting this. If you find that your children have a fascination with animals, this is a great way to channel their empathy by taking them to places where they can volunteer help. And, when these activities are done as a family, you can really bond with each other and it creates that closeness and that trust and that love. And it just makes you a tighter family unit. And that's what we want at the end of the day. This is what the Prophet Muhammad praised people for when they were able to raise their children in such a healthy way. And even if you're a single parent, you can still do this on your own. Okay? You can still do it on your own and give your child the love, care and attention they need. It can absolutely be done. Don't despair if you're a single parent. It might be difficult if you've got a few children to do this on your own, And this is why community support and family support is so important. But you can do it on your own to the best of your ability. You don't need to go above and beyond. Just do what's within your means to do. Okay? Don't pressure yourself and don't exhaust yourself raising kids. Just take it a day as it comes and do what you are able to do. You know, there are a lot of women who complain that their children don't have good male role models in their lives because the father is absent, or, you know, they don't have uncles and so on and so forth. And so there really is a strong need for young men to start camps, boot camps for boys, and it should encompass everything. So moral education, Islamic education, talking about feelings and emotions and all of these things. We really need young men to be doing this. This would be an amazing business idea for people who are able to do it. And they have to be great role models. They really have to be run by empathic men. They can't be run by narcs, and they can't be run by codependents. These boot camps for single mothers who have children who do not have male role models are so needed. Okay? We don't want any of those camps where it looks like they're preparing men to go to jihad fi sabilillah. Oh God, none of those. Okay? We just want boot camps for young boys who can learn how to become healthy men in the most empathic way possible with the right physical and intellectual activities. So it's something for you guys to think about. Wherever you are in the world, these boot camps are really needed. So if you can set them up, you will be highly rewarded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because you will be really helping out the single mothers who have boys and they're struggling to raise them without the right male role models. So I'll end it here. I hope it's helped and that you found this podcast beneficial and that it's, inshallah, inspired you. And I also pray that everyone who is not married, who is listening to this, understands the importance of marrying someone who is empathic, because your role as a parent is really going to be made easier when you are empathic and you are supported by someone who is empathic. So don't take risks on people who do not show you from the beginning that they can be those empathic parents whom you're going to need as support. Because raising children to be moral, empathic Muslims who are believers is not easy. It's a difficult journey to go through. So at least marry someone who is going to make it enjoyable and bearable. Okay? They're not going to make it more difficult. They're not going to make it an absolute living nightmare. Okay? Take this opportunity to really reflect on your choices and the people whom you consider for marriage, because the future generation actually depends on that. Okay? The future generation are depending on you to choose the right fathers and the right mothers to raise them. Yeah? If you need further help with this on a one-to-one basis, just send me an email to the address below in the description box, and I can help you, inshallah, further with parenting issues. And please don't forget to like the podcast if it's helped you, because as you know, the likes on videos help the YouTube algorithm to recommend these videos to people who need them and who search for them on YouTube. And do share them with people whom you feel could really benefit from this content. So if you're still with me until now, thank you so much for listening. And thank you for your kind comments, your kind dua, and your feedback. It really does help me to improve the podcast and give you great content, inshallah. So thank you again for your support. And until the next podcast, inshallah, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.